cover some of that. We do believe that the preliminary plan provides a balanced approach between providing outdoor recreation opportunities and protecting natural and cultural resources. Folsom Lake SRA, it's just one part of the recreation picture in the whole region. The SRA will never satisfy all the rec demand in the region, and it's just one piece in the puzzle. There's city and county parks, there's national forests, there's BLM, and so, as Steve mentioned, we really looked at aquatic recreation is important within the state recreation area, trails, and day use, and kind of focused on those areas in the plan. Our approach to general plans has changed since 1979. There's a lot of specificity in the 79 plan, articulating the exact number of parking spaces for different areas. And over the past 30 years, we've changed how we prepare general plans, and they're a much broader direction now. We identify the type of facilities and the general location, but we don't have a lot of that specificity that we did in the 79 plan. And those details are developed in project-specific plans. Things like the exact number of parking spaces. And the reason we've changed is because over the course of the life of this plan, conditions will change. And if we put too much detail in and we're not able, because of changed conditions, to provide that exact facility that was proposed in the plan, we either have to amend it or it becomes obsolete. And so we really provide broad direction in our current general plan. So a little bit about the 1979, the last general plan that was prepared. Many of the facilities that were called for in the 79 plan were constructed over the past 30 years. There are a number of facilities that have not been built, and in some cases that's changed because of changed conditions or there's specific reasons. And I'll highlight a few, and I'm sure we'll have some comments and discussion about others. But the 79 plan called for a restaurant and picnic facilities at Observation Point, which is on Folsom Lake, just on the left wing dam, basically. And now that's the area where the new spillway is going to go in, and that area is no longer available for recreation use, and really it's been closed to recreation use since about 2002 because of security concerns with the dam. The 79 plan also called for a small marina at Dyke 5, which is over on the other side of the lake, and a boat rental facility there. As part of our current planning process, we did look at, we know there's demand for the boat slips at the marina, there's waiting lists, and we did look at a number of locations around Folsom Lake to see where we could put additional marina capacity, a second marina. And Dyke 5 is one of the areas we looked at. That's a very shallow basin over there. That side of the lake is very shallow topography, and it's one of the first places that goes high and dry as the lake drops. And there really isn't sufficient upland area for the support facilities needed for a marina. And so we analyzed that as part of this current planning process and determined that that really wasn't the best place to locate additional marina facilities. Another 79 plan called for a lot of development in the Granite Bay area, second beach area, many more picnic facilities. But what that plan recognized, back in 79, they were already having traffic congestion problems on Douglas Boulevard with the existing facilities. And that plan recognized that in order to develop some of those facilities proposed in the 79 plan, state parks would have to acquire property and construct a second entrance into Granite Bay. And the plan recognized unless that happened, many of those facilities wouldn't get built. And over the past 30 years, State Parks was not able to acquire all the property necessary for a second entrance. And there are residential developments that have gone in that area that make creating a second entrance into Granite Bay problematic at this point. So those are some of the changes and conditions and reasons why some of the facilities in the 79 plan weren't constructed. Talk a little bit about some of the facilities that are proposed in the current proposed preliminary plan, because I know there's concern about how many recreation facilities are proposed, and I thought I'd highlight a few. The plan does call for expansion of the existing marina at Browns Ravine by 200 to 340 slips. There's 685 slips right now. It calls for the expansion of the campground at Peninsula by 50 to 100 sites. Currently there's 104 sites out at the Peninsula. I should add also that the plan does provide for, if State Parks is able to acquire property that would allow the development of a second marina, it provides the opportunity to do that. If we are able to acquire property in a couple locations, there's a couple locations in the lake that we've identified that are appropriate for a marina. But really it's contingent on acquiring additional property for the upland facilities and the access. Plan proposes new picnic facilities and boat ramp improvements at Rattlesnake Bar. Calls for replacing and enlarging the Granite Bay Activity Center, which is a very well-used facility for all kinds of purposes over in Granite Bay. Calls for development of a new similar multi-use facility on this side of the lake, either at Folsom Point or Browns Ravine, and provides the idea that that new multi-use facility could serve as a boating safety instruction center. The Aquatic Center on Lake Natoma is a boating safety instruction center. It's kind of a Department of Boating and Waterways designation, and they've put a lot of money into that facility, but it primarily serves non-motorized boating uses and instruction for non-motorized boating. We're proposing a facility at Folsom Lake that would really provide the same kind of instruction for motorized boating uses. Improved picnic facilities and boat launch facilities at Folsom Point. New picnic, parking, trails, other facilities at Mississippi Bar. Improved picnic facilities and boat launch facilities at Willow Creek. A new picnic facility at Lake Overlook, which is a vista point on Lake Natoma. Improvements to various trailhead and staging area facilities and new trails, and also a new visitor center. And there's a couple locations proposed as potential locations for a visitor center. So that's what's in the preliminary plan, just a highlight of some of the recreation facilities. And the preliminary plan is only one of several alternatives that are analyzed in the environmental document. There is an alternative 3 titled Maximize Recreation Opportunities in the environmental document that provides additional recreation facilities and opportunities beyond what's in the preferred plan, which is the preliminary plan. So if you're reviewing this document and you don't see all the facilities you'd like to see, you might look at that alternative 3, because there are additional facilities proposed in that alternative. And we've analyzed the impacts of those facilities in that alternative. I just want to highlight kind of what the plan says about some of the key issues that Steve mentioned earlier that were identified in the planning process. Trails, a really important recreation use within the state recreation area. There's about 100 miles of trails within the area that serve all kinds of trail uses: hiking, running, horseback riding, mountain biking, road biking. We have paved trails as well. There's lots of demand for those trails. There's a limited land base. We have some existing conflicts between users. We've gotten some input at our past public meetings. We know we've left out a few equestrian staging areas in our lists of existing facilities. We apologize. We'll include those in the final plan. So just quickly, some of the direction for the trails in the plan. It's broad direction in the form of goals and guidelines. A sample of some of the broad goals is to develop and maintain a trail system that serves broad public benefit and diverse trail uses. We know we have all kinds of different uses, people looking for different types of experience. We want a diverse trail system. It's not going to all be multi-use or all limited use or we're going to have a mix of trails. Provide a complete trail loop around both Folsom Lake and Lake Natoma. There's only a short gap of the paved loop around Lake Natoma. And there's bigger gaps around Folsom Lake to complete a loop around the trail. The plan calls for a trail bridge across the North Fork to help complete that loop. And some of the other guidelines in the plan, we really need to develop a specific trails master plan or trail management plan that makes specific decisions about the allowed uses on trails, the specific locations of new trails, and so that's something called for to be prepared following this general plan. And we've started the background on that, doing an inventory of our trails, GPSing all of our trails and getting them into a GIS layer. The preliminary plan kind of provides a framework for trail classification. It identifies the different types of trails we have, shared use paved trails, shared use dirt trails, limited use trails, fully accessible trails, and some different criteria to look at that are important to these different trail classifications and will be important when we look at allowed uses in the trail management plan. What's the location of the trail? Is it close to population centers or is it more remote? The access and connectivity of the trail. Is there lots of connectivity to other trails or limited connectivity? The terrain. Is this trail in gentle terrain or is it in steeper, kind of more challenging topography? And it kind of, with that, the degree of difficulty of the trail. Is it a fairly easy trail or is it more challenging? And then the use character, including the amount of use the trail gets. So this framework is just helping to set up some of the decisions that will get made in the trail management plan. Some of the other direction for trails is completing an inventory and database of our trails, looking at how we can promote trail stewardship and collaboration involving all users in trail planning, and also recognizing the interest of private property owners, neighbors that live adjacent to the state recreation area, and involving them in the trail planning. Mississippi Bar was one of the key issues. It's about a 500-acre area adjacent to Lake Natoma. Historic gold dredge mining occurred there. More recently, Tykert mined gravel there. And it's largely undeveloped. The stables does occupy a small portion of the area, and there's trails, including a paved bike path that pass through it. But because it's relatively undeveloped, the plan really looked at it as an opportunity. What would we do with this relatively undeveloped area? So the plan direction includes, helps identify, protect, and interpret the important natural and cultural resources. There's some very disturbed areas. There's a big flat that Tykert utilized that's basically unvegetated, darn near level, and it looks at restoring or reusing that heavily disturbed areas. Calls for additional recreation facilities, bringing vehicle access into the area, developing picnic facilities, additional trails. There's some ponds that Tykert developed in the area, ponds and lagoons that link to Lake Natoma. And the plan calls for expanding those ponds and better utilizing them for paddling opportunities, fishing opportunities, different types of recreation use. And Scott went over the intent of the direction regarding the stables. Another issue in the plan we identify as Folsom Lake Quiet Days. This was a kind of shorthand for a concern raised by members of the public during the planning process about the lack of opportunity for slow-speed recreation on Folsom Lake and the impacts of motorized recreation on other users, on other visitors. The specific proposal by some members of the public was to designate one day a week on Folsom Lake for non-motorized use. In engaging these people, our sense was that Folsom Lake right now provides pretty diverse, the whole state recreation area provides diverse water recreation opportunities. Lake Natoma, there's a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit on Lake Natoma, has been for many years, and it's really managed for slow speed and non-motorized use. We recognize that Folsom Lake is an important resource for motorized uses, fishing, water skiing, wakeboarding, and also that both arms of Folsom Lake right now have speed zones, and those are, on both arms actually, the speed zones shift depending on lake levels, and they're primarily there to, because hazards pop up, and so as the lake drops, we move those speed zones down. So they're really a public safety feature. The proposal in the plan is to extend the 5-mile-an-hour speed limit on the North Fork arm about a mile downstream. And actually right now, the speed limit on the North Fork varies from about a mile below Rattlesnake Bar to about a mile above. What this plan really just does is indicate that we're not going to shift the 5-mile-an-hour zone a mile up above, but as the lake comes up, we'll move it from where it is below to right about Rattlesnake Bar. And the purpose of that is really to try to create an enhanced recreation experience for canoes, kayaks, perhaps fishermen, slow-speed recreation use without displacing too many of the motorized users. You know, certainly limiting Folsom Lake to slow-speed use one day a week would be a huge impact. So we really tried to look for a solution that would have relatively minimal impact on existing users, but also enhance opportunities for these other types of uses, canoeing, kayaking, other types of slow-speed recreation. Another key issue in the plan was lake levels and boat launch capacity. Folsom Lake is a reservoir managed in the half the year for flood protection and half the year for water supply. The lake fluctuates between 466 feet elevation at high pool down to this year it got below 370 feet. So quite a difference in the lake levels over the course of the year. Region's growing. There's greater demands on the water supply, not only for municipal use, but also the water quality in the delta, downstream fisheries, the salmon in the American River and the Sacramento River. And the plan anticipates that in future years there's likelihood to be greater periods of lower reservoir levels in the future. And we also looked at what the launch capacity, how well we serve boat launching at different lake levels. And when the lake's full, oddly, we kind of have some constraints currently with our boat ramps and the amount of launch capacity. And we need to add capacity when the lake's above 450 feet elevation. And the plan has some proposals to address that. We're also kind of deficient in providing boat launch capacity at the other end of the spectrum when the lake drops below 425 feet. And the plan proposes extending a number of the boat ramps to provide additional access at lower water. Marina capacity. We've talked about this some already. The plan proposes to expand the existing marina, which is 685 slips right now, by anywhere from 200 to 340 slips. Again, project-specific planning would determine